Hey, this is Lewis, and I wanted to talk about blockchain, crypto, and all that stuff. Um, I have a lot of mixed feelings about cryptocurrencies, but I thought I'd just say everything I know and see if any of it makes sense. So one of the first things I real like when we talk about cryptocurrencies is that a lot of people find it really hard to they don't understand what the technology is, what is a blockchain and all that. I've tried to explain it in a meaningful way, but basically, the idea behind the blockchain technology, for the most part, is to have a ledger that uses cryptography, right? So it's encrypted, and then to decentralize the ledger so that there's not just one place that the ledger's stored. So you have multiple places, nodes, right, that confirm the ledger. And so when any sort of transactions taking place on the blockchain, these nodes communicate with each other to confirm uh, the transaction, right? So it provides transparency and security, right, in a kind of decentralized way. It's not truly decentralized because you got there's just big money involved. So whenever you have big money involved, you're going to have a centralization of capital because capital is already in the hands of a few people. So this is one of the problems with a lot of these new crypto projects is that they're trying to figure out a way to decentralize their projects, but big money comes in and buys up the bulk of the tokens, the government's tokens, and all that. And so the decentralization process for these projects is difficult. And a lot of these projects aren't necessarily meeting those goals. As far as a limited understanding or a limited explanation of what blockchain tech is just it uses cryptography, encryption, and a transparent, decentralized verification process. So this allows communities to not be beholden to, let's say, centralized authority like a central bank or a government or something like that. So one of the ways like the U.S. dollar works is that there's a legal tender law. So businesses are forced to accept U.S. dollars, right? Because it's the law, right? So one of the reasons why U.S. dollars have value is because there's a legal tender law and there's the authority of the state that backs the dollar. And so the way blockchain works is that there isn't a legal tender law. There's just a consensus of what is and what isn't. And that might seem like an oversimplification of that process because it is. All right. So that kind of explains what blockchain tech is. It's the ability to store information in an encrypted way and decentralize it so that if one server gets hacked, right, or is compromised, the history of transactions and the program, the project, or whatever, is can continue on. Even if one node goes down, you can. It's going to be really hard to override all the nodes to like hack Bitcoin or something like that. Like you can't just spend a Bitcoin and then say I didn't spend it and then spend it again because it's decentralized. All these decisions are all these transactions are confirmed through a process called consensus. Anyway, so this is really dry, right? So some of the benefits of this tech is that we're getting decentralizing money. moving it towards more of a trust, um, community trust, and community interest, and community vested, so people are interested in these projects, and people find utility in some of these protocols. Pardon. That's really cool, And there's a lot of liberating things here, because a lot of the corruption in this world is because of money and the centralization of money. You don't get nuclear arsenals without central banks. And we see the narratives of the world be geared towards how individuals are bad, and like we're like the Chauvin trial, like how horrible of a person Chauvin must have been for killing George Floyd and all this stuff. But those are micro issues that kind of fall ways to the scale of the macro problems we're facing. Like the Second Amendment issues. Even though, like, I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head, but if 10,000 Americans are being killed by gun violence every year, that pales in comparison to the amount of people who are being killed by tyrannical governments, by their own governments around the world. And so, we can look at the Second Amendment, and it's like, yeah, it's dangerous. I guess a better example even is just cars, right? The fact that so many people die in car wrecks every year, but we still find that the freedom and the ability to drive and have that luxury, that privilege, right, is more beneficial than the risk, right? Even though thousands of people are going to die, this year, and people are dying right now as I speak in car wrecks. We still find that the benefit outweighs the risk and the cost. And I would say, like, Second Amendment, for sure, the benefit outweighs the cost, because we see what happens when governments disarm their people and move towards totalitarianism. And not that I'm advocating buying guns and fighting the government, but at some point, you realize that it is kind of beholden to the people to have revolution when their government becomes corrupt. And it's the only way that a republic will ever survive is if the population itself is motivated, vested, and prepared for revolution once the Rubicon is crossed. So I want to circle back to crypto and all that, right? So we went over what blockchain is, right? It's encryption. Some of the benefits is decentralizing money. And wrap up my last point is governments openly talk about war gaming, World War III, and millions, hundreds of millions, and some maybe even billions of people dying. Those decisions and those probabilities can only exist within the centralization of money. You do not get nuclear arsenals with decentralized money. You do not get hundreds of millions of people don't die in anarchy. If there was no government, you would not get hundreds of millions of people dying. Only governments can kill that many people at once. And I'm not advocating necessarily anarchy. I'm more on the lines of, like, we need some new ideas. I think people don't need government in the way that we imagine it, or we envision it now, especially the way we have now. I think people are rather intelligent. We self-organize well. We see the animal kingdom, lots of self-organization happening. In our cousins and our mammal counterparts, they have self-organization, and I think we should have a little more. We should value ourselves and our liberties a little more, and understand that we don't need to be necessarily taken care of by some sort of nanny state or whatever. Oof. All right. I guess what, and then so some of this stuff about crypto. Um, I think the crypto space is inevitable, and it's going to keep expanding. There's the ups and downs, and the there's a lot of volatility, but there's there's two things happening in the crypto space. There is a speculative economy within the crypto space, right? So people are buying tokens, they're then not really interested or vested into these projects. And I'm one of these people, right? I'm swinging altcoins, sort of. But I'm moving away from that as I've matured in my understanding and of the technology. Is that, we have the speculative economy within the crypto space, just like how we have a speculative economy within the stock market, and that is where a lot of this volatility comes from, is people buying and selling, and that's the volatility. But we can look at the trends, and the trends are up. The trends are that this whole space is expanding since I've been participating in the crypto space. It's more than doubled in value, and I think $10 trillion market cap for cryptocurrency is a very realistic goal by the end of the year, or 2 years or whatever. There's no rush. But yeah, so I think find some projects and buy and hold, and be interested and be vested and look into these things, because some of these projects are really are adding value. There are some privacy concerns with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and stuff like that. A very liberating technology, but at the same time, there is no privacy in it, because it's an open source ledger, right? So everyone can see all the transactions, and by its very definition, it is not private. And there's kind of a double-edged sword there, right? Because governments can track all these transactions very easily. But there are other projects that are looking to bring in privacy options. I think Zcash is one. Litecoin is looking at having a privacy. I think Verge is another one, and I think it's XMR, Monero, I think is the name of the project. And they have privacy options, and that's good, and that's cool. And one of the things I find so liberating about the technology is that pretty much instantaneously I can take my wealth, my capital, and put it into a alternative currency, send it anywhere in the world. They can then exchange that into any sort of fiat, stable coin, or any other token they like. Yes, there's fees and all this and stuff, but it's whatever. It's just there's too much utility to the space that it is it's undeniable that there is value here, and the social economic implications of the technology itself is very liberating. Giving people the ability to be their own banks, and we're even looking at the ability for individuals to pool capital resources into liquidity pools, and then those pools being used as collateral for loans and stuff like that, and then everyone who participates in these pools gets interest. So it allows communities to be banks. It's just a very interesting. In the power dynamics of the whole thing, it's decentralized, and it's the banks are no longer necessary in the way we understand it. We stopped needing banks when we stopped carrying gold, anyways. One of the reasons, I guess, the fable, right, is that people wanted a safe place to keep their gold, and so they went to the goldsmith who had the only safe in town. he gave you a gold certificate, and people just traded the gold certificates, and then fractional reserve banking was born out of that. I think Zeitgeist, that documentary from 2006 or 5, really has a good breakdown of that story, But yeah, so that's basically everything. My thoughts and feelings, and a little insight into that. I do think that the DeFi space, the decentralized finance, is the most interesting aspect of the crypto space, and I think projects like MakerDAO, Yearn Finance, these things are revolutionary. The stablecoin, MakerDAO backs up is this is revolutionary tech, and that's stuff that I believe in, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I'm investing. I don't have a lot of capitals, but I'm putting some into it. And I guess one last thing I'll say about the crypto space, and I know this has gone on a little longer, but is it's a appreciating asset. And it not only does it rewards early adopters for sure, but it appreciates in value based on how many people are using it, right? And it's very transparent. And yes, it's a bubble. Of course, it's a bubble, and but that's all right. It's a bubble we understand. The bubble makes sense, Bitcoin is a bubble because people keep buying into it, and if everyone took the money out of Bitcoin, yeah, it would crash. But there's no reason for people to do that, and it doesn't mean, and it would recover anyways, just because of the technology itself is it's inevitable. There's just too much value in being able to transfer your capital instantaneously around the world, and hide it from governments and nefarious groups. But yeah, it's an appreciating asset, and I think the whole space is going to expand. I think money should be something that appreciates in value. I think the idea that we have fiat currencies that depreciate due to inflation is insane, and just it's really the root cause of a lot of the corruption of government, the ability to print and borrow money without any sort of accountability from the electorate. All right, so this is Lewis. 18 minutes of me talking about crypto.